Hey everyone, welcome to the 269th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have an awesome show for you today. First of all, though, I need to apologize because the last two shows have ended abruptly in strange spots. Thank you for telling me about it. We were dealing with an issue with the place that hosts our audio. We're hoping that that is now fixed. So thank you for bearing with us. And now, let me tell you what this show is going to have in it. It's going to be amazing. We've got Wyze has big plans. We're covering stuff for Microsoft Build. Lots of stuff for Microsoft Build, actually. We've got an update on Wink. If you're going to pay for it, here's what you get. We've got a new product from Logitech and some updates from Google Assistant. On the contact tracing front, we have something for warehouse and industrial locations from Nodal and Avnet. And our guest this week is Dr. Ben Calhoun, who is co-founder and co-CTO at Everactive. We're going to be talking about sensors that are self-powered from energy harvesting technologies, and they're going to be used in industrial applications. So it's a really fun look at maybe the future of the industrial IoT. And we're also going to hear from one of our sponsors, Very. And now, let's go to a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Edge Impulse. New machine learning technology called TinyML and today's efficient 32-bit microcontrollers and CPUs are enabling real-time sensor and device data insights, making use of 99% of sensor data that's discarded today, right on the edge. Edge Impulse is working with Google, ARM, ST, and others to make TinyML available to all developers and enterprises, enabling new high-value applications in machine monitoring, asset tracking, facility management, health and safety, and more. Learn more and sign up for free at edgeimpulse.com. Okay, we're going to kick this show off with Wyze. What do we say about Wyze? I feel like I read about them all of the time. They're one of the best and most innovative companies in the smart home space. This is a company that launched in 2017 and soon after had a $20 connected camera. This was at a time when you could buy like a Nest Cam for like, what was it, $250? It was a lot.
Yeah, it was up there, yeah. And the innovation is really in the pricing for what you're getting for these devices, I think.
Yes, and I've said this a million times, but what Wyze has done is they have nailed pricing, software, and delivering the product at such a low price point, and nobody else can come close. And their goal, as always, and I've had them on the show a couple of times, has been low margin, high volume. So they don't make a lot of money on each of these devices, but they're going to make a little bit, and they want to sell a lot of them. To that end, they put out a video. With COVID-19 really disrupting the market, they have decided to raise outside funding. So they put together a splashy 5-minute video that they want to play for investors before all of their meetings. The video is great production value. It basically likens Wyze building devices for the smart home to Henry Ford's innovations in making cars cheap for people and making them ubiquitous. So Wyze wants to be the Ford of the smart home is the idea. They also packed a lot of information in this video that's worth talking about. One, they sold $95 million worth of gear in 2019. And this was before they even launched a bunch of new stuff, because they've already this year so far launched a lock, they've launched a scale, fitness tracker, they're about to launch an outdoor camera, thermostat, and apparently a doorbell. And that was the other part. They have big plans for launching lots of devices in the coming months, or, yeah, we'll just say this year.
I'm amazed that at a $20 and $30 price point for their two cameras, one is the regular camera and one is the pan tilt camera for $30. I'm amazed that they had 95 million in sales last year. That's a lot of Wyze cameras.
Yeah, well, they also had the Senses, the little sensor kits, and they also had light bulbs. But still, yes, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think all those newer products were available through the entire year.
No, they weren't. So you're right.
Right. That's amazing when you think about it. And the whole likening to Henry Ford is all about, for them, I think, supply chain and distribution. I mean, the founders come from Amazon. So they're basically saying in that video, we've taken what we've learned from Amazon in terms of supply chain and distribution and so on and applied it to our products. So that's one piece of it. And then they don't hint at it. They basically come out and say, we want to take over the smart home market because we want products that all work together so you don't have to cobble pieces together from different companies and have different platforms and all that. So, I mean, I knew they had big plans, but I think this video is, yes, it's for investors. It's not for us people who buy.
I was going to say, do you want to invest your money in it now?
I wish I could, to be honest, because I think they're really onto something. You know, I mean, how many times do we come back and when somebody says, I need a webcam, I need cameras for my house. And we're like, well, you have the Arlo's and you have the Nest and you have these and you have those. But more often than not, for most people's needs, a $20 or $30 Wyze cam not only does the job for less, but also has more privacy than some other cloud-based or cloud-centric subscription fee type services with those other cameras because you can just use a micro SD card.
Right. It does keep things local. So the other element in the video was that Wyze, they're going to launch monitored home security and probably at a pretty cheap price point and other services. So I'm excited about the people detection, getting really high quality people detection in there. And we missed this last week. I actually promised that I'd tell you about it, and then we didn't. In line with this, seeing where they're going, last week we were supposed to talk about Wyze partnering with a company called Noon. And this is to allow you to have an emergency button in your Wyze app that you can press to call for an ambulance or police. And you have to manually set this up. Kevin, I think we went into the settings menu. Do you remember how we did that?
Yeah, we did. We went into the settings, and I think it was the Wyze services, and we were able to add the new emergency call feature by doing that. And to do that, you actually have to make sure or validate your home address because Wyze needs to know that.
And eventually it'll cost money. It doesn't cost money now.
That's correct. So, we can see where this is going, and I'm not a fan of subscription services in general. Although security-wise, I could see myself paying for something as long as it's relatively inexpensive and I feel there's a lot of value there.
There you go. All right, so we're excited about Wyze. They actually did raise some funding recently, but they need more. So now we know Wyze has big plans and Kevin wants to invest in them. Go, Kevin. Go, Wyze.
Yes, I have my checkbook and my pen.
All right. I'll take that. All right. Let's talk about Microsoft Build, which is it's reimagined as a virtual event and will probably be one next year too. This has always been one of my favorite events because it is very geared towards the enterprise and enterprise developers. And Microsoft has had a pretty compelling IoT story. So this isn't a huge part of Build, but I always walk away from Build with good understanding of how IoT and industrial IoT are going to play out. Microsoft's Azure cloud is the place for most industrial and enterprise people to host their IoT applications. AWS is right behind them, but the big name brands, they love themselves some Microsoft Azure. So, Build announcements. There's a bunch. The biggest one that I want to focus on there's two, really. Azure Digital Twins is the first one. And this is a public preview feature for Azure Digital Twins. That means it's basically it's beta. It's not GA yet. It's technically not a beta, but it's a beta. So Microsoft and everybody else in the industrial IoT has been focused on digital twins, which, depending on who you're talking to, this is a digital replica of an object, but it's a concept, I guess. It's not just a digital replica. It's a dynamic understanding of how that device or object that it's replicating will change over time under certain circumstances. So it is both a record of everything that's happened to a machine, but it's also how that machine will behave in simulated circumstances. So that's how you should think about digital twins. They're super useful because using a digital twin to simulate something can give you a sense of how to optimize a factory floor or how something might change if you change a variable. So it's a really big thing. And for most, it's still a concept.
And for developers who maybe they work in JavaScript and use something called JSON, which is something I'm starting to use in my college classes, that's JavaScript object notation. The new Azure Digital Twins uses an open modeling language. Well, it's based on JSON LD. So developers who use JSON will be very familiar with this. It's what Microsoft is calling a digital twins definition language. So where you would say maybe the state of a device would be on or off. That would be one of the values in the JSON key value pair. So I would think devs should be pretty familiar with this language.
Yes. And so what Microsoft's doing with the digital twin effort is they're trying to build both definitions and entire ontologies, so entire dictionaries of how the world works in a digital twin. And this can be everything from saying, hey, if you have an open-close sensor, here are the things it can do. Here's how it works. Here's how you code that. And they're trying to make it easier for people who make devices to input a digital twin into Microsoft software. If I'm making a HVAC system and I want to bring this into Microsoft's digital twin software, I have an easy and standardized way I can do that. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is on the other side when you want to populate and create these digital twins. And Microsoft is doing this around its campus for both security and facilities management. It's very easy for people to set these digital twins up and build them out. As part of the digital twin news, Microsoft announced that it is forming what it's calling the Digital Twin Consortium. They're forming it with founders Ansys, Dell Technologies, and Lendlease. And I'm going to write about this more in this week's newsletter because it's a big honkin' deal. It's basically, we talk about standards in the smart home all the time. This is standards for creating replicas of everything in both the enterprise and industrial IoT. It's going to be big. So that is what this is. We'll see if it actually works, and we'll go into more detail later on. Other build news. Other thing I'm excited about is Azure RTOS. Many of you may not be aware of this, but Microsoft has had its own real-time operating system for a while. It purchased a company called ExpressLogic, and with it, got one of the most popular non-free RTOSes. The most popular RTOS out there was free RTOS, which Amazon actually hired the guy who invented that and now has, I won't say a lock on free RTOS, but Amazon has tied itself very closely to free RTOS. Microsoft has its Azure RTOS, which is its real-time operating system. These are operating systems for embedded devices. They have real-time needs. It's not like Windows. It's the opposite of Windows or your mobile. Yes. These are very tiny. But Azure RTOS is now available. It's going to be in, looks like GA. A bunch of chip makers, ST, NXP, Renesas, Microchip, they're all going to support that, which means they'll sell you a chip that already runs Azure RTOS and you can just activate it. You will have to pay for it. And the other thing that's interesting about Azure RTOS is this is for those sensor devices. So it's RTOS for sensors, right? It's actually going to tie into Azure Sphere. So any device that is capable of running Azure Sphere, which is Microsoft's security program, will have their own microchips on that device that can talk to any Azure RTOS device. What that'll do is any sensor running Azure RTOS, basically, when it talks to a Sphere device, if that Azure RTOS device is compromised, the Sphere device can stop it right there. That's a nice linkage that you get. Again, Microsoft wants to tie you into their ecosystem, be it at the RTOS level, the OS level, or tying you into Azure Cloud. They're going to make it super easy for everything to work, but then you're going to have everything working on Azure.
So Microsoft has their Azure RTOS. We know Amazon has free RTOS. I don't think really that Google has an RTOS. I know Fuchsia is a microkernel that can work on anything scalable down from an RTOS all the way up to whatever. I don't think they have something comparable here.
I don't think they do. You can, again, this gets to the fact that I don't think Google's really done a great job building out their Google Compute Platform for the IoT. Mm-hmm. They have partnerships with companies that will offer RTOSes, but it's just not been their focus. I think what's happened, and this is a very gradual thing, when the IT companies came out and were like, oh my gosh, IoT is going to be big. We got to move on down to the edge, move out to the edge, right? They started at the cloud. They created partnerships to be kind of like at this middle edge, like in the customer-owned data center and maybe on the servers that are running in factory floors. But they didn't want to go any further to the actual edge because they were like,
Right.
I don't want to touch that.
I'm not sure that's their specialty anyway, to be honest. It's probably best.
It wasn't, but the customers demanded it. And so that's why you're seeing them pull these, have the RTOS investments.
Right.
Google still isn't there yet. And
I agree.
Maybe they won't ever be. I don't know. Or maybe Fuchsia will come and be designed completely for this and it will blow them out of the water. I mean, I never count Google out.
We've only been waiting 4 or 5 years for Fuchsia. I don't know.
Yeah. So those are some of the things. Also at Build, Microsoft did some quick Azure IoT Hub and Azure IoT Edge updates, mostly just to help with device management, support more seamless container use, pretty normal stuff. They also expanded IoT Central, and this is a lot of names, you guys. I'm really sorry. Azure IoT Central is their SaaS IoT application. If you don't want to build it yourself, you just want to let Microsoft handle all of your IoT stuff for you. That's what IoT Central's for, and then you can customize a little bit based on that. They added support for Azure IoT Edge and Azure Sphere in that. So now you have security and the ability to tie your super edge devices that were running IoT Edge back into your SaaS platform. That's a lot. Okay, so that's a lot from Build. Big news there. Very fun. Let's talk about a deal that Sony and Microsoft announced. Kevin, you want to talk about this? Because I feel like I've been talking a lot.
It's okay. You've been following the IoT stuff at Build, and I've been following more of the developer stuff there, so it's all good. This news came out before Build. It was earlier in the week. Sony Semiconductor Solutions and Microsoft had partnered with a smart camera sensor. I mean, Sony, that makes sense. Sony is probably the top seller of image sensors that are used in phones and cameras and so on. But Microsoft isn't. But that's okay, because Microsoft is going to provide the Azure AI capabilities, which to some degree will be embedded on Sony's vision sensor.
Yeah.
It's the IMX500 for those who are keeping track.
Microsoft built some models, some computer vision models. So Sony's going to embed those right on the sensor, so you don't have to build your own. And that'll be good for anybody who doesn't have a data scientist lurking about. And Sony's also going to do a smart camera app that's targeted towards systems integrators and ISVs, and that'll let you train your own computer vision model that you can throw up in Azure and then run on this chip. So, yay!
It's definitely more for the industrial, I would think, the industrial group.
Industrial, retail. We're seeing a lot in retail for using cameras for using cameras to be hey, are people feverish? Which I'm not a huge fan of, but they're also using them to make sure people stay 6 feet apart. And even for inventory management, that sort of thing. So it's a thing.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping I could use it to check the inventory of Tasty Cakes at the local Wawa, but that's not going to happen.
Tasty Cakes. All right, let's talk about Wink. Kevin,
let's talk about Wink.
I know that even with the extra week, I don't believe you're subscribing, are you?
No. That would be a hard no. And let me just say, it's not because it's a bad product. I mean, I've been a fan of Wink for as long as anybody I know. But I've just moved on a little bit because Wink didn't move on. Wink didn't really show me much innovation. And then they sprung this, hey, you need to start paying $5 a month within the next 1 week. Then they changed it to 2 weeks. And I still get email reminders about it just to use the hub. So I'm kind of done. And if people aren't, that's fine. That's their choice. It's their money. But I've been wondering, what is Wink going to do with the $5 per month subscription fee?
What does my $5 a month subscription fee that I'm paying get me, Kevin?
Indeed. Well, we got an answer to that this week. If you are a current or former Wink user, you probably got an email. But for those who didn't get the email, I will tell you what you get. They are going to expand on their Lutron Clear Connect support to improve stability and release some new app features. That sounds good. They're also going to improve the Madam A and Google Assistant voice assistance integration, which is also good. And as an early preview, they're telling us that instead of having 2 columns in the lights and power home screen app, you'll have 3 columns starting next week.
Woo!
I'm like, really? That's kind of lame to announce, but okay, that's fine. I'm sure people will welcome it. Other than that, no hard details. Just we've got lots of stuff in the works.
It'll be better.
Well, listen, I'm sure it will be. I mean, I'm kind of being a little facetious here. But why didn't they tell us this in the last 18 months when they were kind of radio silent? That's kind of what
I don't think they had
with.
people building this stuff, so they probably couldn't tell it. They were hurting. They're probably still hurting. We'll see. I mean, I think the jury's still out if this $5 a month is really going to make a difference for people.
We will see. Honestly, listen, I hope they do great things with the money and for the current customers. Don't get me wrong. I'm just a little leery. And frankly, I think I'm just done. I'm not invested in it anymore.
Yeah. I'll check it out for us. All right, back to the industrial side in our news section. Nodal, who we've talked about before, it is a Bluetooth tracking company. We've talked about it recently because they're doing a track and trace app called Coalition. And now they have partnered up with Avnet to basically build a device that workers in warehouses or offices can wear that will vibrate to let you know that you're not 6 feet apart. When you get too close, you get a little vibrate. Estimote, which is a company that makes Bluetooth beacons, also created one of these, so this is not a new concept. But Nodal is doing this with Avnet. They're calling it the Nodal M1 device. You have to buy it in orders of 10,000, so this is not for you and me. But
at a minimum.
At a minimum. What this is going to do is if I'm a company and I buy this for my workers, I will provision it to an individual employee. It's a custom app. And then you scan the device with the smartphone app. It'll set up the hardware and it generates a secure employee key. So again, there is not the level of privacy that's in the Coalition app because this is designed for an HR implementation. And the Nodal M1 is going to operate within the company's firewall. They'll run their own server for this thing. So no data is going to leave the company. It's not going to work. Like if you're wearing this outside of work, this isn't going to ping the Coalition app. That's your phone running the Coalition app, not this particular device. So
right, but HR can alert people who have or may have been near an employee that had previously reported a COVID-19 infection. So
yes, it doesn't just vibrate to let you know you're too close. It's also a way for employers to track and trace for COVID.
I believe the first shipments will be available in October, so it's not like you're going to go out and get this right away if you're running a warehouse or a place with a lot of employees.
Which is a shame, but, maybe they're not back to work yet. Let's talk smart cameras. We've got a new one, and it's HomeKit certified. It's actually part of the new HomeKit secure whatever that is. Kevin?
Secure video.
Secure
HomeKit
video.
Secure video. Yes, it is from Logitech. It's the Circle View. It is $159.99. You plug it in. It's USB powered. It does, as we said, work with HomeKit. It has a very, very wide 180-degree field of view. It has what they call enhanced night vision for up to 15 feet for superior clarity in the dark. One thing I do like and dislike at the same time, it has a privacy button on it, a physical hardware button that can turn the camera off instead of requiring you to go into your app or your home app on the iPhone or whatever. You can literally just tap this button on the back. The downside from what I see, and this is according to 9to5 Mac, who has tried it, you can't turn it back on again via the app. You have to actually physically hit that button again and or have a geofence alert turn it back on. So I'm not too keen on that. But for privacy,
I can see why you would do it. Like, let's say I'm at home and I don't want my husband to see me wrapping gifts. If I turn on that privacy button and my husband tries to check the app and he sees that it's private, he can't remotely turn it on and then see, like, I'm in control because I'm physically there.
Yeah, that's fair. I get it. That does make sense. You can actually use this thing outdoors. It's got a weatherproof body, which is rather nice. Yeah. And then the HomeKit secure video aspect is all of your video sent end-to-end encrypted to Apple. And that's where the notifications will come from and the analysis will happen and so on. And that does not count against your iCloud storage account if you pay for that. So I think that's a nice feature for people who use iOS.
Nice. All right. So Something you would buy?
No, because I don't want to be tied to HomeKit, only because I don't want to be on an iPhone forever, perhaps.
Got it. All right. Well, maybe you're comfortable being tied to Google forever. And if that's the case, Google Assistant now supports controlling freezers and air conditionings.
It does. For developers, there's some new APIs exposed for Google Assistant to work with smart freezers and smart air coolers, yes.
Oh, and I should make a distinction. I'm thinking of an air cooler being the same thing as an air conditioner, but it is not.
It's actually not. I was surprised to hear that as well.
Google explains that these are devices that allow temperature cooling and humidity control, but they're more lightweight and portable than air conditioners and have a water tank attached. So this reminds me of like an evaporative cooling device, or what my family in Louisiana would call a swamp cooler.
I think of it as the dehumidifier that we keep in our basement that grabs all the water out of the air. This can help put it back in the air and make you feel cooler.
There you go. So I'm a little, this may not be designed for my particular use case, but
probably not.
It's
probably
there.
Not.
All right. Well, that's a lot of news happening this week. So let us now switch to the Internet of Things podcast hotline. The IoT podcast hotline is sponsored by Schlage. The best home automation adds convenience, not hassle. And with its built-in Wi-Fi, the Schlage Encode Smart Wi-Fi Deadbolt shows you just how easy secure can be. Learn more at schlage.com. And this month, we are letting you have the chance to win a Schlage lock or a Helium hotspot. A Helium hotspot is a LoRaWAN router. So if you're more on the industrial side, you may choose that. Or you may be like, nope, I really want that fancy Schlage lock. It's a good one. To enter to win, just give us a call at 512-623-7424 before the end of this month. That is May 31st at midnight Eastern. You have to be in the US or Canada to win. If you want to win, you've got to call us, leave us a question, and we may answer it on the show. And this week's question comes from Sean in Australia, who needs a smart lock. Let's hear it. All right, this voicemail is actually an email, and I'm not going to do it with the Australian accent. So this is from Sean. I just recently moved into an apartment, and I would like a smart door lock. However, we can't change the lock as the building manager requires entry, and the smart locks that work over an existing lock don't fit. I was wondering, are there smart door locks that work with an electronic striker? So instead of touching the door lock part on the door, you change the bit in the frame. Okay, Sean, I would love to tell you that you should use our sponsor, Schlage, for this, but nope, that's going to make you rekey your locks and your apartment is not going to be happy with you. So just scuttle that. But we actually have recently talked about a lock that would do right by you, and that is the August. August does not swap out your actual locking mechanism. You can use your old keys with it. Basically, like we said in the review, I think last week, this is a robotic deadbolt turner, and it would work for your needs. I believe the August will work in Australia. If it doesn't today, I know that they are planning an international expansion now that they are owned by Assa Abloy, which is the maker of VL locks. So if not now, coming soon. I also have one other option. Sean, it's not for you because you're in Australia, but it is an option if you have this problem and you happen to live in the US. Level Lock, which is made by a company called Level Home. They raised a lot of money from Walmart, actually. This is a really neat device. Instead of buying a robotic deadbolt turner, you're actually buying a deadbolt. So what happens is you replace the deadbolt part of your lock. So normally...
The internal guts, what's in the actual door frame,
yes.
The door itself. Yeah.
So the outside of your lock is going to look exactly the same as it always has. With August, you get this like thing that you stick over your lock. With Level, you're replacing the internals that you'll never see.
It's invisible.
It is invisible. People who live there don't even have to know that there's any electronic capability whatsoever. So that is available to people in the US. It was launched last October, but it recently went on sale, and it is $229 for this device. It is Bluetooth only, and it works with iOS and Android, and it is HomeKit compatible. But The August Lock has Wi-Fi. It also has a Bluetooth older version that's Bluetooth compatible, and you can buy a bridge if you need it to be remote access. But these are your two options, and both of those are going to install in 5 to 7 minutes, I would say. Okay, Sean, hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully you might be able to have more than one option or no options, depending on your geographic region. Remember, if you would like us to answer your question, give us a call at 512-623-7424, and you will be entered to win a Schlage lock or a helium hotspot. And this concludes the news portion of our show. Please stay tuned for our guest, Dr. Ben Calhoun, who is a co-founder and co-CTO at EverActive. He's going to be talking about how the company built a system and sensors that don't require batteries. They just run on harvested energy. It's pretty cool, and you'll want to know more. But first, let's hear from this week's sponsor. This week's sponsor is Very. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. And today's sponsor is Very, a leading IoT development services firm. And I have Dr. Jen Gamble, who is the data science practice lead at Very, here to talk to us. Hi Jen, how are you today?
I'm great, Stacey. How are you?
Excellent. So tell me why you joined Very and what you're doing with data science there.
So what originally drew me to Very is the way that they're a real leader when it comes to agile IoT development practices. This is because what I'm very passionate about is applying agile practices to data science and machine learning development. So this plus the culture fit is what made Very a great match for me. Now I lead our data science team in machine learning and AI initiatives on our client projects. So in every engagement, we start with a problem formulation and defining the analytical approach. And so we do this by working through a process with our clients where we ask questions like, what data is available? What are the types of statements that we want to be able to make in the application? Is it predictions, recommendations, even fully automated decision making? Who are the end users going to be? What are the workflows that we're hoping to enable based off of this data? What's even possible from a predictive modeling or machine learning recommendation perspective? And that last part kind of we figure out based off of the data science on the data that's available. And then as we actually build out the end-to-end application, we apply these agile development practices to all aspects of the system that we're building. So that includes the data pipelines and machine learning models as well.
Wow. All right. So where do you see data science going in the IoT field, and how does Very play a part?
Looking at the field today, best practices for agile data science or agile AI app development are just now beginning to be created and adopted. Also, these types of interdisciplinary IoT projects, to execute on them successfully requires a group of data scientists, software engineers, designers, subject matter experts, firmware developers, hardware engineers. All these people need to work together as a cohesive team. And so most enterprise businesses or industrial businesses, even if they have this kind of diverse set of skills already in-house, they don't necessarily have that group of people used to working together for agile IoT product development purposes. And so that's a really non-trivial part of it. And so what we're seeing is a need for specialized IoT development firms, especially ones that can include machine learning and hardware development as part of their core competencies. So Very is positioned to really fill this gap for industrial and enterprise businesses.
All right. So Jen, where do I go to learn more about how Very can help me with my IoT project?
You can reach out to us at verypossible.com/Stacey. So that's verypossible.com/STACEY.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Ben Calhoun, who is co-CTO and co-founder at EverActive. Hi Ben, how are you today?
Hi, Stacey. I'm doing well. Thank you.
I am super excited to have you on the show because you are doing something that I think is so essential to the Internet of Things, which is providing sensors and the technology to reduce power consumption. This is important because nobody wants to go around changing batteries all the time on their sensors, nor do they want wires. So we're going to learn a lot more about that. But first, let's talk about EverActive, your company. It started a while back, and it used to be called something else. Can you tell me a little bit about the founding and the story there?
Sure, I'd love to. So you're right. We changed our name just a couple years ago. The original name of the company was Psychic, P-S-I-K-I-C-K. and we rebranded to Everactive. We started in 2012 with technology that spun out of the University of Virginia and the University of Michigan. I'm actually still a professor in electrical and computer engineering at the University of Virginia, and my co-founder, Dave Winsloff, is a professor at the University of Michigan. So the technology came out of our labs at those two schools, and we spun it out to build a technology startup in the space of the Internet of Things. And you're right, we were tackling the problem of power consumption. And in particular, we're tackling that problem from the point of view of building chips that are much, much lower power than what is available off the shelf in order to bring down the power consumption of wireless sensor nodes and ultimately get rid of the batteries. So that's what we've been able to accomplish at Everactive.
Yeah, and these sensors that you make, they consume about 20 microwatts. Is that correct?
That is a number that we used a lot, especially in the early days, because it comes from the typical amount of power you can harvest from a small form factor. If you have a sensor node that has harvesters on the order of a square centimeter or a few square centimeters, with the exception of outdoor light, that gives you a lot more power, most other harvesting modalities give you something like 10 microwatts or so per square centimeter. And so that sets a power limit in sort of worst case conditions of 10 microwatts or 20 microwatts. So we use that number a lot. And yeah, the full system power of our active sensors is now at that number, or depending on which technology generation we're looking at, well below that number.
Awesome. Okay, so you said a couple things here that we're going to dig into. One, you talked about this. It's not just a chip, it's a system. So we're going to talk about what that system entails. And then I'd also love to know how it works.
Sure, thanks. I'll start with a system view and why we believe at Everactive that the system is important for batteryless technology. And then we can circle back and talk about how we achieve it. So first of all, let's think about batteries. What's the problem with battery-powered devices? Well, it really comes down to one of maintenance. In order to replace a battery or a device whose battery has run out of energy, you have to go touch it again. So that places a limit on how many devices you can conceivably place out into the world. In the extreme case where people talk about envisioning an Internet of Things in the future that might have 1 trillion sensors, even with 10-year battery life, at 1 trillion sensors, we'd be changing 274 million batteries a day, and that just doesn't scale. So we've said from the very beginning at Everactive, the only way to get to a truly large-scale Internet of Things is to get rid of batteries. So that's what we've done, and you have to take a systems view for that, because once you get rid of the battery at the sensor node, you still ultimately need to get that data back to a place where you can use it. And we have the realization that I think a lot of other folks in the Internet of Things business have come to, which is that the real value of remote monitoring and remote sensing is the data stream itself. Another way to put that is, in some sense, our customers don't really care if we have batteries or not, but they don't want to have to go back to the device, no maintenance, which lends itself to no batteries, and they want access to the data stream. That's the real value, because they want to derive insights from the data stream. So at Everactive, we've built a solution that is a full stack system. It has super low power chips that we design that are custom ICs that we integrate into batteryless wireless sensor nodes. Those talk wirelessly to gateways, which use existing backhaul networks like LTE to get the data into a cloud platform where we can perform analytics and extract insights from those data streams. So that's the system solution.
Okay, on the chip side, how have you optimized your ICs?
That's an excellent question. In some sense, the only way to get to a batteryless solution is to overhaul the whole design. To use an analogy that I think helps to illustrate this, if you imagine taking a Boeing 747 and saying, I want to take an airplane and make it fly without needing to refuel. One approach is to start with your Boeing and start making changes, like reducing the weight of the seats and then changing the material you use in the wing. It's pretty easy to imagine that you're never going to get that Boeing to fly without fuel. The only way you can do it is if you use the same, maybe high-level architecture of wings and a fuselage, but you totally redesign it. It's got to look something more like a glider that's solar-powered, for example. So we did the same thing. We had the benefit of approaching this problem in the universities. So we started from first principles and said, how can we build a batteryless system that can run continuously, actively, not just turning everything off all the time to save power. And that required redesigning the whole system. Three of the biggest areas that required changes were, number one, the radios. Radios are notoriously high power for a reason. Physics just requires that when you're transmitting energy, you have to spend a certain amount of energy to get the RF propagation. And then the other part of radios that we really tackled with custom circuits is on the receive side. So most existing radio receivers are pretty high power, 4 or 5 milliwatts for Bluetooth and quite a bit higher for Wi-Fi and other common standards. And the way that you can lower power traditionally is just turn those devices off most of the time, but then you run into problems with having to synchronize them. We threw out that approach and said, we want to have a receiver that's on all the time. So we built a wake-up receiver, we call it, although it's really just a data receiver that can operate continuously at an active power of 200 nanowatts. That's 0.2 microwatts, which is 0.0002 milliwatts. So it's about 10,000 times lower power than Bluetooth, which means you can leave it on all the time, which means that your sensor nodes can always be in low latency connectivity to the network. The second area that we really optimize is in low power computation. So we use an approach called sub-threshold circuit design, where we make use of transistors when they're off by conventional definitions, and we actually use the leakage current of those off devices to do useful work. And that allows us to significantly reduce the energy required per operation so that we can do continuous computation at the edge at much lower power levels. And then the third area that we've optimized is really sort of all the other stuff in the energy harvesting, the power delivery to the rest of the system, and all of the other components that fit in and around to make the node work. We've redesigned them all to have it work as a system that's very low power.
Okay, awesome. And so now we understand how it works, and I'm sure we all feel smarter because of it. But what can you apply this to? You've got products out into the market. What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, it was a lot harder than I originally thought it would be to find the first applications, partly because when you talk to customers about what their problems are that could benefit from a batteryless device, the answer is almost anything. You know, everybody liked the idea of getting rid of batteries, and they wanted to apply it to all kinds of stuff, including some that don't really make sense by people who didn't really understand the technology. You know, we had people who said, oh, good, can you make my cell phone not have a battery? Well, it doesn't quite work like that. So we talked to lots of customers to explore what the pain points they were experiencing were that had the features that could really benefit from batteryless. Those features include they have lots of places where they want to harvest. That prevents a battery-powered solution because you're not going to put many, many hundreds or thousands of devices out in the field with batteries, even if they have multi-year life, because you're still going to be out there changing them all the time. We had maintenance professionals in the manufacturing and process sectors, industrial sectors, tell us, I have a maintenance problem right now, and I don't want to trade that problem for the different maintenance problem of just changing batteries. So we looked for problems where there were lots of measurement points, but where knowing the information from those points had an immediate and real return on investment. There was a hard dollar savings or opportunity to make money by knowing that information. So the first product that we released is a monitoring system that monitors valves in a steam distribution system. Those valves are called steam traps. So steam is used all over the place in manufacturing to distribute energy around a plant and to maintain constant temperature and pressure in different parts of the manufacturing process. The steam's generated by a boiler, it's distributed through pipes, and when it transfers energy to the process load out at the different points in the plant, that energy comes out of the steam and the steam turns back into water. That's called condensate. And a steam trap is a valve that allows the condensate to come out of the steam pipe but keep the steam in. And steam traps are mechanical devices, and they can fail. They can fail open so that they allow steam to escape down the drain. And that's a lot like running the air conditioner in your house with the windows open. These valves can also fail in a closed fashion such that they prevent condensate from going through them. That backs the condensate up into the steam system, and it can either lead to downtime because they have to stop the process, or it can lead to potentially real dangerous problems and safety issues because you can get plugs of water in the steam system that get slammed around by the high pressure steam that can, in the worst case, lead to explosions that are safety hazards.
Okay, so you guys chose this as your first one, and how have companies reacted to this? Because this is actually a fairly essential piece of equipment, and trusting a startup with a brand new technology feels like a little dicey. So what was that process like for y'all?
That's a great question. It was definitely a journey that we're still on. And you're right, there were some concerns by some customers about the fact that we're a startup. There are also concerns because this is a particular asset that most companies are not monitoring. The existing solution is predominantly manual. So there's a manual inspection of steam traps typically once a year. So people are not used to having a technical solution here. There are some battery powered options, but frankly, nobody's using them in large numbers for exactly the reasons we've already talked about. So we did face some barriers. There's also a real barrier in the manufacturing space to introducing any new risk that might introduce new downtime, because downtime, of course, costs a lot of money. We've been able to overcome those barriers mostly by demonstrating the product. It's easy to install. It is batteryless, so you don't need to go back once it's installed. And because it's batteryless, it's operating continuously from harvested energy. It can actually produce way more data more continuously than a battery-powered solution, which allows us to show a continuous stream of information about the state of every single trap. And what we've encountered is that customers, once they see what the product can provide for them, really like the visibility that it gives into this large number of steam traps. A decent-sized manufacturing plant will have thousands of these.
All right, so let's talk now about your next product. Dun, dun, dun. You're moving beyond steam traps and going into vibration sensing?
That's right, Stacy. Our next product, which we just announced our release, is based on our new technology platform. We're calling it Gen 2, our second generation technology. And it is designed to monitor electric motors and other rotating machinery. So it is a batteryless wireless sensor. It's powered by either indoor light, powered by the thermal difference between the chassis and the air, the temperature of the motor chassis and the air, or it can also be powered by electromagnetic. The right choice of energy harvesting modality will depend on the motor and its context. So it harvests energy. It can operate continuously. It takes triaxial accelerometer data, temperature data of the ambient temperature of the chassis, and some other information about the local environment of that device. And it uses that information to assess what's going on, the state of the asset. Of course, for the motors, most of the information about how the motor is performing is in the vibration. And we, because of the benefits of the chip technology that I described before, can do a lot of that computation to extract important information right on the device. So we take a bunch of the raw accelerometer data on the sensor node, and then before we communicate anything, we process it on the node to extract the total energy in the vibration signal and to take a fast Fourier transform to get the frequency content in signal so that we can see how the frequencies are changing at different harmonics over time. And then we can report back over the network to the gateways. And the wireless range of these devices is 250 meters in an industrial environment with a non-line of sight, a lot of metal all over the place.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk about the market and how it's changed given the fact that we're now in a pandemic. I know that I've talked to a couple people who operate factories and they are looking for ways to keep as many of their people remote. It seems like what you guys offer might be helpful there, but what are you seeing?
We weren't immediately certain about how the changes that resulted from the pandemic would affect our customers' perception of the product. But you're exactly right. I think it's highlighting the value of remote monitoring. People have always wanted to know remotely what's going on with their critical assets. But of course, as this pandemic has led to reductions in workforces and having large numbers of the people who would traditionally be on site moving to working from home, that leaves a lot of uncertainty about what's going on back in the place that I'm not working. And that uncertainty leads to risk. And so we're seeing that customers are ramping up their interest in the ability to do remote monitoring. We've also seen a couple of other aspects of what the product provides that are becoming more appealing to customers. obviously the economic effects of this pandemic are going to be really severe. And that leads to, I think, all companies paying closer attention to savings. And the advantage of being able to remotely monitor these kinds of assets is that it can save money. So it reduces operating costs in both the case of Steam, where you can find failures that are, for example, allowing Steam to run down the drain. And in the case of motors, you can identify motors that are potentially leading toward failure, and you can replace them in an organized and sort of predictive fashion to prevent downtime, which also saves money. And this is different. Customers' perceptions of this last point vary, but for some customers, it's increasingly important to consider environmental impact. And again, these kinds of remote monitors can really reduce the impact on the environment because it gives you more awareness about how to improve the efficiency of your assets.
Okay, and then finally, I know a big thing right now in manufacturing is trying to integrate a lot of this together to improve the overall efficiency of the plant. Right now, this is a standalone solution. How do you envision working with other players in a manufacturing plant, other equipment providers? Maybe it's an overarching software system. What are your thoughts there?
I think it's become clear as Internet of Things products proliferate that one of the real challenges is how heterogeneous those products are and the challenge of integrating them together. And of course, the one answer to that is, well, let's just build a platform that allows us to bring them all together. But of course, a lot of people have had that idea. So there are so many platforms whose purpose is to integrate that it's hard to know which of those to go for. We recognize that we're unlikely to be that platform. And so we're not trying to be the platform that integrates everything together. Instead, we want to anticipate that some number of those platforms will eventually emerge as the go-to ways of integrating information. And so we've built our cloud platform with the idea that it's basically going to act as a bridge to easily connect to whatever the customers might be using to aggregate information from other vendors and other sources. So we want to essentially play nice with the rest of an ecosystem that is still being defined and emerging. And that's the way we're viewing integration.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show today and explaining what EverActive does and what you're seeing in the market today.
Stacey, it was my pleasure. Thanks for the great questions.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.